Welcome to the Game Plan After Dark. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Jason Staples. Greg Barnes, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, as always, and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Doing this at 9:30. It was not intentional to do it to prepare for the late kick for North Carolina. But Greg, you've been covering Carolina football a long time. I've been watching for a long time. I remember Arizona State back in the early 2000s. I don't remember a kick much later than the one we'll get on Friday night. Can you recall one? And I love Pac-12 After Dark. I've said that repeatedly, but it feels like that for sure.
Yeah, this has been a crazy week, but nothing is crazier than the fact that Carolina's going to be kicking off at what 10:30. It's wild. Yeah, it's the fun part about Atlantic Coast Conference expansion. You cover the entire Atlantic Coast, and apparently, if you go far enough north, you end up on the west coast of the United States, which is where Carolina will be playing. I'm trying to think what year it was. Maybe was it 18, 17 or 18, where Carolina went out and played at Berkeley, and it's a cool spot to watch a game. That was an early game, but I don't think it's a bad thing. We talked last week. I think the fact that North Carolina was able to get a bye week while the firestorm hit was a good thing, and probably not a bad thing that they're not at home and that they are on the other side of the country to kind of get their wits about them. And is being away from home and having to travel as a team really helps you kind of be inclusive and kind of circle the wagons, if you will, and which is clearly needed. And I think that's an important part of this. And you just hope that the guys can come out and play well and as we talked about so many times in the last 2 weeks, you got to find traction. You got to find something that works that you can build on. And they just have not had much of that at all on either side of the ball. And you have to find some small things, get some small wins, and you start stacking. And that's more than anything, that's what needs to happen this weekend. We've talked a lot about everything that's been aired publicly and how it's on a very slippery slope right now, headed in the wrong direction. So any type of progress that can halt that momentum is a positive thing. And I think being on the West Coast, maybe in a 10:30 kick, will provide that opportunity.
Yeah, folks in the chat are already asking about who's made the trip or who's making the trip. Carolina doesn't leave till tomorrow. They leave on Thursday. It is fall break, or fall break's coming in Chapel Hill for the students, and Carolina leaves on Thursday for that Friday night kick. A lot to talk about. We can get into it as deep as we want to, but Jason, you've watched this sort of unfold. How important is this for this Carolina team? Not the fan base. We know the fan base is starving, but how important is it for a player or for players to have some sort of positive success? And they're not quitting. We've heard practices are what they are. There's been some guys leave the team, but for the most part, or for the overwhelming most of them, they're in it. They're all in. How important is it for them to have success individually and team wise on the player level?
And I'm tempted to go all Herm Edwards on you.
You can go Herm. You can, just as long as you don't go Jimbo Fisher.
You play to win the game. I mean, how important
you got the next 5 minutes.
How important is winning to you? I mean, that's why you're doing this. And yeah, I mean, I think if you ask these guys, they'd be like, well, yeah, the next game is everything. That's what we're trying to go out there and win. So yeah. Now I will say, Greg mentioned, circling the wagons and all. And I will say, we'll remind everyone that, allegedly at least, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. And we all know, Bill Belichick's relationship with the Buffalo Bills over the years. So, I don't know what that means exactly, but I don't know if Greg's trying to speak in code here in terms of what to expect in this one about circling the wagons and the Buffalo Bills and Bill Belichick. But I'm here to find out and read between those lines. But no, I mean, how important is this? I mean, I don't know. Is winning important to you? Is having success as a program important to you? I mean, then yeah, it's pretty important. It's the next game on the schedule, and it's a game after you've just been embarrassed for the first month of the season, actually 6 weeks of the season, 7 weeks of the season. And, the hard part, one of the things that Belichick, I think, does best as a coach, that he's historically done best as a coach, is he actually doesn't focus on winning. He's always been a process guy. And that's something I firmly believe in. Now, I could go all Jimbo Fisher on you in terms of process, but I've just been forbidden from doing that. But I think the benefits of being a process guy are really significant. I mean, if you focus on process, generally speaking, over time, as your processes get good and you do things the right way, then the results that you want follow. That's just the nature of it. The hard part, though, is that a lot of times when you start doing things the right way and you get that process, the success doesn't come. It doesn't happen early on. And the hard part about the process at that point, and of course, Michael Lombardi's letter, told everybody trust the process. The hard part about that is when you're not having success, when you're doing things and the focus is on the process, it's really easy, especially for young players, to stop trusting the process the same way. So the real importance here is for guys to start to see, like, and this is the whole proof of concept idea I've talked about before, is, oh shoot, I did it right that time and it worked. Oh man, right? And Greg, you know how this works, like in golf, right? To bring that back to what some of our commenters love most, is when we start talking golf, you're changing some stuff up. You needed to make a change in your swing or whatever, but it's really hard when you've got certain habits ingrained and, you've been doing something the wrong way for a little bit and you got to make this shift. And anytime you make those adjustments, boy, it's rough for a while. And it's only once you start to, like, there's that moment, and I know you've had this because you're a good player. There's that moment when you're changing something and and all of a sudden you do it right and you feel the strike and you feel the difference and you see the ball flight, the one that you're looking for, and you feel it and it's like, oh. And then all you're trying to do is repeat that feel. It's like, okay, all right, I got this. And then it's addictive, because the process has now shown and you felt the results of that. That's where this is important. And it's not even just about winning this game. I mean, I guess you could lose this game and still come out of it with like, okay, all right, coach, I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to feel that. Like, it's about how well you play and about whether or not you're starting to do the things that are going to be associated with future success. You start to see some of the success from that. That's really what it's about. And that's where the importance of this really lies for the program now and especially moving forward.
Yeah, that was kind of the point of my question, is that we keep hearing about the process. Well, the process is not working. Well, damn if I'm going to keep doing the process if this process isn't working. And Greg, to Jason's point and to the point of it all, is these guys need to see some success. That's part of the buy-in, and certainly the outside noise doesn't help. But getting on the road, getting a process-oriented win, I mean, I think that's what all of this is about. Every week we talk about, and I'm king of must-win games, but at some point, you must win a game. To give the players hope, because human beings are not just going to keep, even an animal eventually learns. They usually learn quicker than we do, that if my hand gets bitten when I go there, I'm not going to keep doing it. But Greg, to just sort of build off of Jason's golf metaphor, if you'd like, but it's certainly relevant.
Oh, you're not going to have to twist his arm on that.
I know. First of all, what's your handicap? I mean, I think Greg's like a +10.
Maybe once upon
Okay,
a time.
Scotty.
Nowhere near that now. But I will say that when I used to teach, this is during I taught from 2000 2007, and during the latter part of that, a story that I went back to time and time again to illustrate Jason's point is Tiger Woods, because after Tiger Woods went on that incredible run, really from the time he won the Masters in '97 through that incredible run in 2000 2001, he started realizing that he needed to change up his swing. And so he went through a little bit of a drought there. And what Tiger will tell you is that the changes that he did, even though he was hitting thousands of golf balls a week, sometimes a day, it took him about 18 months for it to finally click for him to finally trust it, and for him to see those ball flights exactly the way he wanted to.
And for it to be automatic.
And yet I had people coming to me once every 2 weeks, and they'd hit the ball 30 minutes on the driving range. You're like, well, how come this ain't fixed yet? And so I would
they're not
say
75 years old either doing it.
that's right. And so I was like, okay, look, like it takes time. But that's the important thing, is because it was my responsibility as a golf coach to be like, you got to trust me. And so you'd have to find those little wins. And it's explaining it so that they understood what was taking place. But it's also showing them examples of how it could work. And so it may be, for me, in that situation, breaking down a full swing where we're only focused on the bottom eighths of the swing. So you may only take the club back to your right knee and then swing through, just so you can feel what we're looking for and you can trust it. And then we're like, okay, now we're going to take it from your right knee all the way up, which is a long way. Anybody who plays golf understands it's a long way to move the club with you not being comfortable and confident in it. But that's what had to take place. That's the key component here for Belichick. Belichick came in, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of us thought he carried such a cachet with the reputation as arguably the greatest NFL coach of all time, that people automatically, especially his players, would say, yep, I trust him. He knows exactly what to do. We've got it. Well, now that confidence has been shaken. And so it's up to Belichick to be like, look, I'm still the same guy. You got to trust me here. The easiest way for that trust to be established is what you're talking about, and that's winning. That's having success. That's flying back from California with a win in your back pocket, knowing that, okay, we've been through a lot of grief the last 2 weeks, or all season long, really. We can do this. We can actually compete and be competitive and win games. That's the easy way. But what if you don't win? Well, it's the small things. It's being able to say to the guys after the game, look, we didn't win, but we did this, and this so much better. Look at the tape. You should feel better about yourself because we made progress. And that's the catch-22, because it is all about the process. If Belichick preaches that, Saban preaches that, that's the way you have to do it. If you're focused on the scoreboard solely, your focus is not where it needs to be. And it's working within your roster to make sure they understand that if you do all the things we're asking of you, we're going to see success on the scoreboard. But because of how things have played out, I mean, it is a delicate balance right now. And so we're going to see, everybody's wanting to complain about Michael Lombardi. I get it. He's not the coach. The coach is Bill Belichick and his assistants. Those are the individuals who have got to maintain that confidence and that trust with the players. So through every gradual step, there's belief growing. And that's what it's going to take. And it's a tough road to climb.
Indeed it is. And folks are watching this and have not watched the coordinators. They had them both today. Steve Belichick, Freddie Kitchens, and a couple of players inside Carolina's got those YouTubes posted up. Go watch those and see if they engender confidence in your belief of the team. It was a lot of that talk, though. It's processed. Scoreboard's not showing the results and all. And as we've talked about, eventually Fans, players, donors, everybody have to see results on the field. Looking at this, and Jason, let's get this out of the way really quickly, and because folks love to make the excuse. Everybody's talking about James Franklin in the chat. He made the excuse when his team went out there and lost on the West Coast. Is it a big deal going across country?
Yes. It's a really big deal. The
Explain it.
rhythms of when you play matter. I mean, so right now it's 9:30. Well, 9:48 as we're recording this live. There's rhythms that we all get into, and I mean everybody knows this. I mean, I guarantee you that various people in the chat, various people in our audience have at some point, been trying to explain something to somebody or think about something and just said, "Oh man, it's late. Sorry, I just my mind's not working like it should." Well, like that applies to sports and things as well. You do get attuned to performing in certain windows of time that you're familiar, that your body's like primed to go at that time. I mean, if you're used to getting up at 5:30 in the morning and getting your workout in, then that your body gets primed for that. If you're used to working out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, your body gets primed for that at that time. Well, the same thing works this way for your for your football players and such, and it impacts not only the physical side of things, because your circadian rhythms, I mean, a lot of these guys, they're not going to bed at 10:30 Eastern time anyway, but they're sure not prepping to play a game at that time, right? They're not doing that. So that's just physically, that makes a difference. I mean, you're kind of sleepwalking potentially, but mentally, it's also a big factor, just in terms of being mentally primed and prepared for that. And it's really hard for West Coast teams when they come east and they have a noon kickoff, which is 9:30 in the morning their time. You see they come out sluggish all the time. And then it's really hard for the really late night games. When you get sort of to the middle of the day games, it doesn't matter as much. But you see this even in the NFL. East Coast teams go west and they play late, and it's a disadvantage. Those teams don't play as well, and those are professionals. And the same thing with West Coast teams coming and playing a noon game east. That stuff affects you. And so yeah, it's a factor. I would say you're looking at, at least, probably more than a field goal most of the time for this in terms of the difference, probably close to 6 points in terms of difference when you're, going east or west at, opposite time zone problems there.
It's an interesting discussion. I mean, which is surprising. Carolina doesn't travel until Thursday before a Friday game, but it's neither here nor there at that point. Going to talk about our new sponsor. Our new sponsor is, who is
Dollar
it? Do we know?
Shave.
Dollar Shave Club. Throw the logo on the screen, talk about it, get my little props here. Go to your local business, wherever it is, Walmart, Target, wherever. Find this box. Get your Carolina swag, get your Carolina razor. When you rep your team, don't stop at the jersey. From the sink to the stadium. It's still one of the greatest lines in a read I've ever seen. From the sink to the stadium. Alums, students, players, fans, anybody can shave with the best of them. Shave with your Carolina handle, Dollar Shave Club. Go to dollarshaveclub.com, or they're available. I had to find it at an end cap at one of the local stores. I looked all around, couldn't find it. They had its own special end cap loaded with Carolina Dollar Shave Club razors and all. And it's cheap. It's not an inexpensive razor, but they handle your business and do it with your school pride, Dollar Shave Club. Greg, let's talk about the game plan a little bit. Somebody in the chat said I can't remember what they said, but they said there's not a game plan. What is the game plan for Carolina here? I'll let you handle the defensive side of it so you can do the California quarterback right out the gate. Carolina's going to have to defend the young man, and without Thad Dixon, that's going to be a challenge on the back end.
Chiave, Songa, Politelli. How about that? And
I
see,
mean, it sounds good to me. And
the crazy thing about it, and it's the Hawaiian, just the way they put their names together. But there's a W in his first name. There's no V, but it's Kiave, and then there's not an N in his last name. But Song is how you say the first part of his last name. So
it's the Polynesian,
yeah,
the AG. It's like, it's just what they do. Sangha
it's interesting,
right?
Yep. It's very very cool name for sure.
I love it.
Yeah. As a freshman, he's been pretty successful for him. California, of course, under Wilcox, they're always going to be defensive first, and which is what they've been. And I think the interesting thing about this kid is that he's showing promise, but like most freshmen, he makes mistakes. And one of the interesting stats is if you look at his deep passes, he's been wildly successful. He's already attempted 42 passes beyond 20 yards. Carolina's quarterbacks have attempted 15. So he's at 3 times. Granted, Cal's played one more game.
Wait, hold on. He's completed more passes downfield.
Correct. He's completed 17.
He's completed 17 passes downfield on deep throws. That's more than Carolina has attempted.
Yeah.
That's another one of those stats. It was like, what the heck are we doing? But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
But where he has run into a little bit of issue is that he has made a lot of miscues. I think he has 6 interceptions in his last 3 games. They were looking pretty good early against Duke, and then Duke just kind of flipped the switch and blew them out after they fell behind by double digits early. I believe they were down by 11, if I remember correctly. But anyway, so he's got some talent. But I think the important thing to know about Cal is that they don't score a ton of points. So this is one of those games where you're not necessarily worried about Cal getting too far out in front of you. But if there's a concern when you don't have a guy who's probably your best defender, Thad Dixon, are you exposed on the back end a little bit? Because this is one of those games where if Cal can hit on one of those explosive plays down the field with one of those deep passes, well, that could be a game changer. And so I really think this is a game where Carolina has to muddy it up defensively. You've got to be protective on the back end. You can't allow any of those explosive plays. I mean, we saw what happened in the Clemson game. Granted, Clemson's going to win that game regardless. But when you get a couple of those busted plays early, the game's over. And you just knew Carolina did not have enough in the tank offensively to be able to come back. Cal's not the same level as Clemson is defensively. They are solid defensively. And so you've got to be able to do your job, try to get off the field, make them march down the field, because that's what they're going to make you do. Because Cal doesn't give up a lot of explosive plays either, kind of like Carolina for the most part. And then you just have to make sure that you take advantage in the red zone. And this is one of those games where third down conversions matter, red zone matters. Yes, it matters every game. But if you can keep them out of the end zone, make them kick field goals, you're going to have a chance. And that puts it squarely on the offense to go out and make plays. This is, because of reasons we've already talked about, having to go on the road, having a late kick, all those things, especially the pressure that the team's under after the last 2 weeks. Those are hurdles. But if you're going to have to play any type of team in the ACC, this is probably the kind of team you want because they match up pretty well with you. You got to watch out for the freshman because he is solid, but he is prone to mistakes. And so if you can create some turnovers by making him march down the field, there's the opportunity there to be able to keep this close. And that's the key thing for this team. You get to the fourth quarter against a power conference team with a chance to win, because that has not happened against a major opponent yet.
That's another one of those stats. I mean, they've had no shot in the third and fourth quarters against any team with a pulse. Jason, I do find it interesting, and the name should ring a bell for North Carolina fans who obsess over the opponents locally, is Kendrick Raphael is Cal's running back. Their quarterback, and I'm going to let you handle the name, doesn't run. In fact, I think he has net negative 19 yards on the season. But Raphael's a good back. Cal can be sort of balanced. Just your take on Carolina's defense. And to Greg's point, how does Carolina get pressure when they've not really done that much at all going forward?
Well, I mean, you mentioned they've got a good back, but they've not run the football with a whole lot of success this season. They've had to throw it. I mean, you look at 3.12 yards per carry on the season. And Greg, you mentioned they were up early against Duke. Yeah. But they also averaged 1.41 yards per carry in that game. And the reason that things got squirrely throwing the football is because they were behind the chains a lot, and they were having to throw the football because they could not stay in balance. And really, that's the key to me to stopping what they're wanting to do. I mean, this is one of those games where I think you're trying to avoid giving up big plays. I mean, you almost Gene Chizik this in the secondary, and then force them to execute and not to make mistakes. While up front, I think you're trying to make sure that you do everything to make them have to beat you in the passing game, and you're willing to give up some plays in order to create some mistakes. But you're not willing to let them run the football, and you're not willing to let them beat you over the top. I think those are the things that you're trying to do in this game. But I mean, you look at who they've played against. They 3.81 yards per carry at Oregon State. Oregon State's not good. Like they're bad. 2.54 yards per carry against Minnesota. 2.1 yards per carry against San Diego State. 3.19 yards per carry at Boston College, which is their best rushing output aside from Texas Southern, which we can just kind of throw out. I mean, they
don't totally abandon it though. They may not be great at it.
No, they don't abandon it. I mean, 32 carries, 33 carries, 24 carries, 31 carries, 37 carries, 29 carries. They just aren't good at it. They don't. Yeah. They don't have an offensive line.
Carolina's got to be able to stop that part of it because they're going to try to do it.
Yeah, they don't have a strong offensive line in terms of run blocking, and you'd better win the line of scrimmage on defense. If Carolina does not win the line of scrimmage, and I'm not talking about stalemating the line of scrimmage, if Carolina does not win the line of scrimmage on defense, I don't think they win this football game. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. If they can be balanced at all, Cal's going to score enough points that, Carolina right now is averaging 13.5 points per game, 131st in the country. The defense is going to have to come out and show up and be able to get some stops to put the offense in a position where they can actually play and have a chance to win this game. But if you're expecting to get into a shootout and Carolina's offense to go out there and win that, we haven't seen any evidence this year that that's a viable approach. And I do think, Wilcox's defense, they do a pretty good job. They've always been very well coached on that. They actually are pretty decent stopping the run, although Boston College got them pretty good, 21 carries for 178 yards. But, they do have – they're more limited personnel-wise than, the three – basically the three best teams that you've played so far all, I think, have better personnel defensively than Cal. So, you got some chances there. But to me, game plan-wise – I don't want to put Marcus Allen or, whoever it's going to be on the other side. It's probably, 18 probably going to be the starter over there?
Patterson. Yep.
Yeah, Patterson. So, I don't want to put them in one-on-ones with no safety help a bunch. And if they are, then I'm wanting them to do, kind of true cover 3 type stuff. Play it over the top, force them to beat you up front or beat you in front of you. And then force them to read some coverages. This is one of those games where if you've got some of the stuff that you pulled out for Peyton Manning to change some stuff after the snap and make him think a little bit, you got a true freshman quarterback. Make him have to think when he drops back. Change his picture. Drop a defensive lineman into a space that he doesn't expect him. show two safeties at the snap, rotate, do all sorts of different eye candy defensively just to cause him some problems, some trap coverages. Make him throw, and make him try to evaluate on the fly and think. And I think you might be able to get some turnovers out of that. I mean, again, you said 7 interceptions on the season. He's had 9, I think it is, turnover worthy plays. So that's actually pretty unlucky that 7 of those have been actually intercepted instead of batted down or whatever. But you're hoping that he can do the same thing and throw the ball to you, because that's the path to winning this football game.
Yeah, and Tommy, just to add a little bit to what Jason was saying about the run game, one thing that I've been harping on for North Carolina all season long is their inability to help for the running backs to help the offensive line out. Offensive line has not been great. The running backs are not breaking tackles. If you look at Cal's offensive line is every bit as bad as what Carolina has done. I mean, if you look at the numbers, when you take out the sack yardage, Cal has rushed for 672 yards in 6 games. Not very good. 517 of those yards are after contact. So less than a yard on average they're getting before contact, which is not very good. Where they're having some success is they're able to break tackles. And Raphael's got 23 broken tackles on the season. That's more than North Carolina has total.
As a team.
Yeah. And so that, in where Carolina has struggled at times defensively, is in the run defense area. They've missed 28 tackles. And so it really comes down to, I think the defensive line is going to be able to hold up well against the offensive line. But once Raphael is able to get through, can you bring him down? And if you can, to Jason's point, now you're starting to get Cal behind the chains. Now you're starting to force 2nd and long, 3rd and long, which is exactly where you want this kid having to play from. Because then you can maybe get after him. Then you can force him to make some throws that the coaching staff probably doesn't like. And then maybe you get some turnovers.
And again, that offensive line isn't especially good. And what Duke was able to do is, all of us know Manny Diaz is gonna bring as much pressure as he can. He's a disciple of my old defensive coordinator, Mickey Andrews. He's gonna try to press you, and he's gonna try to force the quarterback to have to make decisions quickly. And I think, what I was saying about changing coverage looks and all that, you can pair that with, 5 and 6 man pressures too. And what Duke was able to do is to stop the run well enough to get the long yardage leverage situations, and then just bring the house, and, or just get one-on-ones, and guys won those one-on-ones in the passing game. In terms of pass rush, that's what you're looking to do. So, that's, I think that's the path to victory effectively.
So I don't know how to phrase the question, but Greg, I'll toss it to you. How success early for this defensive team? I feel like Clemson really just, the snowball went from a dot to a massive boulder immediately. TCU started a little bit slower. UCF was, I think that dam broke on the play right before half. How do you keep this group in it early? If you're Steve Belichick, or if you're staff, and somebody asks who's doing the coaching of the cornerbacks, I think Belichick answered that today. Steve Belichick answered that today, in that it's sort of a group effort. Everybody's in on the corners while Omar Hawkins is not around. So, Greg, getting out of the gate early, Golfer 86 says get a lead. Yes, that's understandable, but it's not always possible. Where's the mindset of this defense, do you think, going into this one, and how important is their heads to stay in it given the offensive struggles, and how much pressure does that bring to the defense?
Well, it brings a lot for sure, because they know that they're not in a situation like previous Carolina teams with Sam Howell or Drake May, where you can screw up. It's okay. Drake's going to come down and score 4 touchdowns anyway. As long as we're not horrible, we'll be okay. That's not the case. So there is pressure. But as we talked about earlier, as Jason kind of laid out, when you're talking about process, you're really talking about small wins. And it really breaks down fairly easy for football games because you have possibilities for wins with each possession. And it really is, yes, you don't want them to score. And ideally, you can get a 3 and out. But it's really keeping them out of the end zone because you can give up 2 field goals, and then all you got to do is score a touchdown, and you've got the lead. So it's winning the field position battle. It's making sure they're not able to capitalize when they get, even if they have success on a drive, that they don't finish it off with a touchdown. And the more you can do that, whether you force a punt or you force a field goal attempt, you can build off of that. You can build momentum. And then you obviously need help from the other side. This is not one of those teams that we've seen at North Carolina in recent years where you can just rely on one side of the ball. This team is not that. You need help from all 3 phases to be able to pull out victory. So there's got to be some give and take for sure. But if you do your part and you limit the damage, that's kind of the main thing. And it's just having trust and knowing that you've got to make sure the players understand what you're trying to do. And that was one of the things that was so frustrating with the Clemson game. And Jason did a good job of highlighting in his videos. Like the way that North Carolina played some of those early plays, it was as if the coaching staff mis-scouted and maybe didn't exactly understand what Clemson's tendencies were going to be. Because some of those plays were just kind of head scratchers. And so there's got to be a solid job by the coaching staff to look at what California's going to want to do offensively and then be able to limit it. As we talked about, Cal has some success throwing the ball down the field, but not necessarily a ton of success. And so you've got to limit the explosive plays and then make them work underneath on longer drives in hopes that they make some mistakes. And so it's little things like that that really add up, but it's just stacking possession after possession without it getting out of hand and without there being garbage touchdowns where they can really take momentum from you.
A couple things there I want to build on real quick before we move on. Number one, you mentioned mis-scouting. I actually think some of it was that Clemson, and this is the thing we talked about before the season, everybody's going to want to make sure they get a piece of Belichick, right? Mm-hmm. North Carolina may not be any good, but everybody's preparing as though they are because of Belichick, right? And we talked about that before the season. I mean, Greg, I think you might have been the one to bring it up on our preview of, North Carolina is going to get the best shot of a lot, if not all the teams on their schedule because of Belichick. Are they going to be ready? Is this team going to be ready to take, the kitchen sink game of so many of their opponents when, they're not talented like in Alabama or, the teams that normally get, your Ohio States that normally get those? Well, the answer so far has been no. And, Clemson, I think, came in with several early tendency breakers that Belichick and company did not have the team prepared for. And that's the hard part is teams are coming in and they'll have put so much on film and then you're used to preparing against that and you've prepped your team against that and then they zig when they've zagged specifically because they're playing you and they're going to have that wrinkle in that week. So that's number one. Number two, I want to bring up one other thing about Cal's quarterback. And that is if you go back to the Duke game, a couple interesting things here. When he was kept clean, he was 13 of 20 for 159 yards, so 8 yards per attempt, and 3 interceptions. When he was under pressure, he was 7 of 11 for 7.8 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, no picks. And when he was blitzed, he was 12 of 9 for 101 yards, 8.4 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And his Pro Football Focus grade, by the way, when blitzed, was in the 80s. When he was not blitzed, it was in the low 40s. So, there's a kind of conventional wisdom that with young players, you blitz them with young quarterbacks, but that's not always true. What you want is pressure. but not necessarily through blitzing, because what blitzing can do is it can simplify the picture. I'm responding to some chat stuff right now. What blitzing can do for a young quarterback, if you blitz and you just play man behind it, for example, that simplifies the picture for the young quarterback. Now he knows where he's supposed to go, and if he's a talented thrower, sometimes that just makes it easy for him. All right, I'm dropping. Oh, they're bringing 6. All right, that means I've got my hot right there, or that means I'm taking my shot right there, put it on the money, and if the guy can spin the pill, he might make big plays out of that. The hard part is if you show 3 guys over here, drop 2 of them and bring 3 over here that he didn't expect, and then you rotate the coverage on him and he goes to where he thought his first read would go, and you take that away and you move him elsewhere, and you only rushed 4, but they're a different 4 than he kind of expected, and you've moved the picture on him, and now he's got to get to a second read, and he might be off rhythm. That's what you try to do against a guy like this, especially what he's put on tape so far. You're not really bringing 6 and playing man behind it. I think that's probably not a good idea in this game. What you're wanting to do is play a little bit more over the top, change the picture in the secondary, do some hot pressure, some zone blitz stuff, do some fire zones, and put yourself in position where, bring 5, you're dropping into safe zones and all that, but you're changing the picture where guys are, and you might be able to create some of those interceptions even when he is kept clean, because he's not seeing everything clearly. He's still a freshman. That's what you're trying to do. And this kid, in terms of arm talent, he's probably top. To me, he's certainly a top 10 player in the country already in terms of arm talent. Might be top 5. The guy can spin it.
That's why you pay for Inside Carolina, folks. Even though these podcasts are free, that's impressive. Everybody, and that is one thing. And you responding in the chat, everybody's like, just blitz them, bring pressure, blitz. It's not always that simple, as Jason points out. Talking with Greg Barnes, Jason Staples here on the Game Plan. Carolina Cal, 10:30 Friday night on ESPN. Let's flip to the offensive side for North Carolina. We've talked about the struggles, obviously. News came out today. Gio Lopez has been practicing with the team, so he appears healthy.
Practice, man.
They had to have to do something during the week, and so Greg, North Carolina's offensive game plan. Freddie Kitchens, again, I refer to that. He said they're getting better. It's not reflected on the scoreboard. I think ultimately that's all that matters. But no Caleb Hood. Obviously, Caleb Hood got, I believe, 1 carry against Clemson. He's retired from football. How does Carolina go across the country and figure this out? This is troubling to say the least. How far the offense has fallen off a cliff, regardless of the quarterback, or is the quarterback the reason for the cliff?
No, I think there's enough issues across the board. that's certainly not just on the quarterback. We were talking about that on the message board, and I made the comment that for this whole thing to actually have a chance, to have a heartbeat, to turn around, you've got to get an elite QB in. But that doesn't mean that solves all the issues, right? I mean, we've seen North Carolina teams of late that really weren't any good at all, but they had a very good quarterback to kind of disguise some things. And so, yes, an elite quarterback would be a little bit of a Band-Aid, but it doesn't solve all the issues. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. Yes, you need, whether it's Max or Gio, they've got to play better. And Cal is solid defensively, but they're also not a team that's really going to get after you. That's not Manny Diaz coaching the Cal Bears. It's very much kind of a bend, don't break type of defense that Wilcox likes to play. And it's effective. If you do it the right way, you can have success. Now, they're not elite by any stretch. They also don't get a ton of sacks. They also don't get a ton of tackles for loss. But they're solid enough, and they're able to limit what teams can do kind of marching down the field. And that's where Carolina struggled, is being able to maintain drives. And that's what it's going to take. And I really think this is set up to be kind of a field position game. If the defense does its job and kind of prevents the Cal quarterback from hitting some easy shots down the field, then Carolina has to be able to move the chains, work on field position, and take advantage when the opportunities arise. And I don't think it's a game that you can just leave it up to Gio or Max, whoever the quarterback is, to make big plays for you. This is one of those games where you've got to establish a ground game. You've got to find some success. That doesn't mean you have to be incredibly successful, but you have to keep the Cal defense honest. And if you can do that, then you can create some passing lanes and give the quarterbacks a little bit of space, because we know they haven't performed well against pressure. But I think that's kind of the key thing, is just knowing that, yeah, they're not going to be coming after you like crazy and getting home a lot, but they're going to be solid and they're going to make you make plays. So are you able to capitalize and stay ahead of the chains and grind out some first downs?
They've got a couple edges that can cause a little bit of havoc. But, Jason, what's the game plan for Carolina's offense? I mean, we've said they're not going to throw it downfield a lot unless they go straight tendency breaker. But your thoughts here?
So which quarterback is starting?
I don't think that's determined.
I think that's going to have some impact on what you run.
Well, there you go. So bifurcate your answer. It's a big word.
There we go. Yeah. So I've said from the jump that if you are playing Gio Lopez as your starter, you have to treat him as a second running back there. You have to use the full 11-man running game, and you have to feature that as a primary part of your offense. They need to come out. Now, look, Cal's defense is actually pretty good against the run. They've been pretty good. And by the way, they do produce turnovers. They produce 7 on the season, which is, same as North Carolina, but North Carolina kind of concentrated the turnovers that they forced. 5 of those are against Charlotte and Richmond. So you kind of have to grade on a curve there. But Cal only gives up about 4 yards a carry in the run game. Their defensive line is actually pretty big. They're 255 and 260 on the edges on guys that are listed as outside linebackers. And then their 2 defensive tackle starters, 320 and 305. And they're big. They've got some guys behind them that have some size as well. And like you said, they're not going to get super aggressive upfield on all this. They do have a little bit of a bend don't break, and they're going to try to change the picture on you in the secondary. They want you to have to throw into coverage, and they like to have linebackers and such undercutting routes. That's where they get a lot of their turnovers and all that. They're going to force you to execute down the field. And they've got some big personnel, and they do a lot of different things to kind of muddy up the run game. Okay, so given all that, I don't think you're going to line up and just pound the rock at these guys. You're not going to just, okay, we're going to line up, we're going to put 6 offensive linemen on the field, and we're going to line up with our big back, and we're just going to hand it off, let him go. You're not going to do that. Not with the personnel you have, not with the personnel they have. But I do think with Gio, if he's going to be your starter, what you've got to do is you got to line up and you've got to option him. Use him in the option game. And yes, I know he has not looked like a dynamite runner so far, but use him in the inverted veer stuff. Use him in opportunities to get between the tackles and all that. And you might say, well, he's banged up. Well, then don't play him. If you can't use him this way, then don't play him. It's pretty simple to me.
Very simple.
But to me, what you've got to do is you've got to start with that, and then he does throw a pretty good deep ball. Use some of those opportunities to get the play action, the RPO game going off of that quarterback run action to get some stuff down the field. And I still say, your playmakers at wide receiver are the best players on your offense. You got to find ways to get the ball in their hands 10, 12, 15 times. So wide receiver screens, RPOs to get those guys the ball, take some shots. You've got to find ways to get the ball to those guys, stick routes, a variety of different things just to get the ball in their hands. Jet sweeps to some of these guys. There's a number of things that you got to do to get the ball in their hands. And you're doing that with either quarterback. Now, if it's Max, you're not using the 11-man run game. You're not doing the same thing. With him, you're going to try to possession pass a little more. You're going to try to, get him into a rhythm to where he's able to get rid of the football quicker and try to get the ball out to your playmakers. That's basically what you're doing. And I think with him, you almost have to run. You have to run a pass first kind of possession pass offense. And this might not be the best game on your schedule to do that because of what Wilcox, not Pilcox, but Wilcox does defensively in terms of dropping under routes and all of that. So, but I think that's what you have to do with him is you have to get the ball out. And you're trying to loosen up the defense a little bit with some of the horizontal game and some of the short passing game and intermediate passing game to try to loosen things up for the run. So you've got two very different approaches, I think, that you have to run for these two different quarterbacks, and it depends on what you want to commit to. What I think they're going to do is I think they're going to probably start Gio Lopez and ask him to be a standard passer and just hand the ball off and then go play action and throw down the field like he's not a dual threat. And like he's, have him operate as a passer, basically run Max Johnson's offense with Gio Lopez. That's what I think they're going to do. But hey, what do I know?
So let's go there because I think for any of us that have ever played the game or at least played Madden, you're looking at this situation, you're trying to salvage a season, which probably can't be salvaged. But you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, why not just yes, use him in the run game efficiently with zone reads or whatever it may be. But even in like passing games, why not just roll him out and run a couple wide receiver drags to follow him and try to have some success in a makeshift scenario? So you have that idea. On the flip side, it's kind of what you allude to, which is what I think is going to happen, is that they're going to keep trying to do what they want to do. And from a coaching standpoint, if you're building for the future and you're talking about process, you can kind of see that, right? You're trying to make sure everybody understands exactly what we're trying to do, even if we don't have success doing it. So how do you balance that, Jason, of like what maybe will work versus what we want to do, but we know it's not working?
Let me interject something. Probably shouldn't. But if they do the same thing they've done all year, last week's going to look like
what have you seen
an enjoyable
to make you think they're going to
vacation.
change it, Tommy?
Nothing. That's the problem.
I mean, they had a week before Clemson to change things.
Yeah, but it was Clemson. The talent different, all that stuff. Jason, so answer Greg's question, which I can't remember what he asked, but you heard it.
So what Greg asked is, what's the balance between running stuff that is more likely to work versus stuff that you want to showcase as like, this is what we want to do.
Yep.
My take on that is the balance is 100% to what expletive works. Because what I'm wanting to show as a coach is that I'm going to build my offense around the skills and the talent of the pieces that I have, and I'm not going to be a toddler trying to jam the wrong piece through the wrong hole. Like, that's a star, kid. You can't put that in the circle. It doesn't go there. That's a star. No. Like, I
told y'all it was game plan after dark.
Good God. Like, my 10-month-old, when that kid was 10 months old, that kid figured out like, oh, star, put it right there. Not right there. That kid even figured out that you could basically put everything through the rectangle. Because if you just turned it, everything just fit. Like, all right, well, square goes in. It's like, no, well, actually, come to think of it, you got a point. Like, you could turn everything. And
my question is, are the rectangles? Is that one of the freshman quarterbacks? I don't know.
Well, see, here's the thing. This is getting to where I'm at this point, which is you find what works for your roster, and what you're advertising is, no matter what you are, we're going to put your skill set to the absolute best use we possibly can. That's the recruiting pitch that you want to have. You don't want to go in and say, well, look, I know we suck, but we're showing you the stuff. Like, look, if you were here, I think we'd be able to run this play that we've been running with no success so far. No, you've got a lot of other film that you can show of the same play and be like, look, this is what we'd like to do that we can't really do yet without you. But here's how we've adjusted. to all the things that we can't do to put this guy in position to do the few things that he can do. It's 100%. The balance is 100% on what expletive works. It's just not complicated. And I will never understand coaches who take the approach of, I have to win, I have to do it my way. I have to, like, I won't do the thing that is most likely to produce wins because I believe in doing things this other way. But I want to do it, but I would rather do it this way. And my thought is, like, if you would rather do it a different way and lose, I don't want to be on your team. I want to go to a coach that is going to find the way that's going to win. Find the process that's going to actually work. That part, like, it's 100% that direction. And Tommy, your question, I think, is a viable one at this point. You have a freshman sitting on the bench in Bryce Baker, who, look, I evaluated him coming out of high school, and I think he's a really good prospect. He didn't look bad in the practice like a pro event. We watched that. Did he look terrible to you?
No, I didn't think so. I mean, he's a freshman.
Yeah, he made some mistakes, but nothing worse than what Lopez has done so far this season. I mean, it took him a little longer to get the ball out at times. Well, Lopez has taken over 3 seconds per drop back to get the ball out. Okay, well, so what's the difference? But Baker is a better thrower of the football. And if you're going to run that offense, you might try it. Maybe that kid, maybe he figures it out faster. Okay, if you don't like him, if you've decided that, I don't know, maybe you don't like his attitude. Maybe he looked cross-eyed at Matt Lombardi and, he was offended or something in the film. I don't know. Maybe you decided that he's just not the guy for the future. And you've got a Torrey Newkirk. One thing I know about Newkirk is he can throw a ball through a wall. That guy's got a huge arm. Now, he was more raw than Baker coming out, and he's not been on campus any longer than Lopez has. But I'm betting you he's not as dumb as a brick. I'm betting you that he's somebody that you can narrow the offense down a little bit for. And if you can't get quality quarterback play from the other two, you might be able to get equivalent quarterback play with more upside from him. And he also can move now. He can also run. So, yeah, it is one of those things where I think if you lose this game to Cal, I think you seriously have to look at whether or not it's worth essentially playing one or both of the freshman quarterbacks to find out what you have. Find out whether those guys can actually improve on the product.
Yeah, I remember saying you can't leave Orlando without knowing what Max Johnson can do. I'm at the point where you can't leave Cal without knowing what these guys can do. Greg, anything to add on there? We got Jason heated, and it's definitely warranted. I mean, what is this? October 15th?
And that's one of them.
We've talked about it for nearly 20 years, guys, but it must be an NFL thing. But Butch Davis, back in 2009, when TJ Yates is getting pennies and batteries thrown at him in Kenan Stadium because the offense wasn't any good, what did Butch say? Could change the offense? Nah. Just wait till we get talent in here. And that same offense is going to score 40 points a game.
Did we ever see that?
No, but they were a lot better after Butch left.
They almost beat LSU without however many players. But anyway, I don't want to go back to that era. It hurts.
But the 2011 team was pretty high scoring, Brent Renner. And then after that, it kind of took off when Larry came in. But anyway, so the pieces were there that Larry was able to take advantage of. But it's something about that mindset. I fully agree about the quarterback situation. I think through the coach's lens, they're seeing, this is the team that, maybe can still potentially turn it around enough to get to a bowl game. I think if you lose this game at Cal, that becomes pretty clear that's not going to happen if it's not already clear enough. And then that really sets in motion. All right, now we're really set on preparing for next year, because if you've got a couple young guys at quarterback, yeah, maybe they're a little bit raw, but what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to lose another game. And I think that has to become a big part of it, because you have to, not just the fan base. Fan base is important. But you have to give the team reason to believe that there's reason to come back next year if they're guys that you want. And if you can play some of the young guys, regardless of position, to see, can they get some traction? Can they shine just a little bit? That gives you a little bit of vision of like, okay, well, this is what we can be. But if you're just going to stick with the guys just because they're going to prevent more mistakes, I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think you have to be looking at guys that can actually provide sparks, even if they're going to make some mistakes. Cal's quarterback's a good example.
Yep.
He's made plenty of mistakes this year, but at the same time, he's shown a ton of promise.
And I don't think Bryce Baker is an order of magnitude worse than him in terms of your overall talent as a thrower and so on. I'm sorry. And look, I think he's he's really, really good. Like, don't get me wrong. He is, Zanga Politelli is a really good player. And like I said, I think he may be a top 5 arm talent guy in the country. But Bryce Baker is not, in terms of arm talent, he's not miles behind that. I don't think. He's probably, top 25 arm talent in terms of the ability to make certain throws and hand talent, which is something that I really care about. So, and, in terms of arm strength, I think Ottori Newkirk probably has a top 10 or 15 arm in the country. I mean, he can really throw it. He can spin it. So you got 2 guys with arm talent. And Greg, we've talked about this before. College football, a lot of coaches, and you were kind of going this direction, a lot of coaches, are right in talking about more games are lost than won. Belichick has said that for years. But college football is also a game where the teams that win a lot are the teams with difference makers. So more games are lost than won, sure. But if you have difference makers, if you have 1 or 2 of those guys, then you're not in positions, you don't put your team in positions where games are as losable, because those guys are making difference making plays that go out and they win games. And that's the thing. I don't think people appreciate enough the difference that, let's say, 1 or 2 legit, like I'm talking about like All-American level players at the right positions. You take North Carolina's roster and you put 2 legit first-team All-Americans on that roster, and all of a sudden things are scary for your opponent. Because 1 or 2 players, it changes the way, like on offense, it changes the way that you have to be defended. Look at how good would last year's offense have been without Omarion Hampton. I mean,
probably what you're looking at this year.
It might have. I mean, I think it would have looked a lot like what you see this year. And, that ain't good. Now, with Omarion Hampton, they were competent. How good would it have been in 2019 without Sam Howell? How good would it have been in, 2022 without Drake May? One guy can completely change the margins that a team's dealing with. So your first order of business, if you're recruiting, if you're evaluating your roster, if you're trying to put guys in position to win games, your first order of business isn't to raise the talent floor with a bunch of guys that are okay enough not to make mistakes across the board. Your first order of business is, can I find like a couple guys that change the math for me? Right? Because I find 2 or 3 of those guys, and then I can have weaknesses around those guys that maybe you can take advantage of here and there. But that changes the game. You got to find the difference makers. Jimbo Fisher used to talk about this. I'm going to go Jimbo on you here. But he used to talk about this with, there are certain, what you'd want to do in general. He used to say, in general, you want to put your best athletes on defense, because you've got to be a better athlete to play defense than offense for the most part. You take your best athletes and you put them on the defensive line rather than the offensive line. You know, your quicker players, you want them at corner rather than wide receiver a lot of times because those guys can respond. They don't know where they don't know where the offense is going. They have to be better athletes. He said, but there's one exception. You have to determine, is this a guy who changes the numbers on the scoreboard? He's like, that guy, if he's a scoreboard changer, then you put that guy on offense. Because if he's one of those guys that you just get the ball to him and you change the numbers on the scoreboard, you can deal with other stuff on defense. But another touchdown or two on offense, that wins games. So you put that guy on offense. You're always trying to find somebody who changes the scoreboard. And North Carolina, who on this offense changes the scoreboard? Ship? Maybe. I mean, he's the closest guy they got. That's it.
Yep. Tommy, Will Wade at ACC Media Day a couple weeks ago, I thought said it very, very well, that when you bring in all these different pieces, right, what you have is a bunch of pieces, and some are good pieces. But State brought in Darian Williams, who was just named ACC Preseason Player of the Year. Will Wade said, he's not a piece, he's a part. And that speaks to exactly what Jason's just talking about. Yes, you need the complementary guys to build out your roster. You need gamers. You need guys that elevate everybody around them and make the team have the potential to have success and can go out and create that success. And Carolina just really does not have that on the other side of the ball right now.
And that was, I think, the big mistake that they made in building this roster in the offseason. What did I say all offseason? I kept saying, like, I mean, they got a number of guys that are kind of okay. They're average players, for Power 5. A few of these guys are above average. They've got a bunch of guys that are kind of like, high-ish floor guys. But what I said coming in is they might only have one difference maker on this whole team. And by the way, he's hurt right now.
That's what I was going to say. He is not playing.
Yeah. So they might have one difference maker on this whole team, and that's Thad Dixon. That's it. And if you only have one difference maker and he happens to be a corner, you're in trouble. Right? And again, going to basketball, would you rather have in the NBA, let's just go, historical here. Let's say it's the mid-90s. Would you rather have a team where every player in your starting lineup is an A- player? Or would you rather have a team of B to B+ players and Michael Jordan?
Yep.
I know which one I'm going with.
Every time. Give me Kobe.
It's not close.
Right.
It's not close because you're not winning a championship in the NBA without a top 5 or 6 player on your team.
Here's the irony of all this. If you've watched NFL football for 20 years, Chris Collinsworth has overdone dialogue with the Patriots of saying, well, Belichick brought in this receiver. He brought in this linebacker who was kind of washed up at another place, but he's coming in and he's filling this role that is so important. He's an important piece of the team now, and it's made them that much better. And that is true because pieces matter. But why did that only need a piece? Because they had Tom Brady at quarterback. They had the greatest quarterback in the game. It's all you need is like good pieces around him. To your point, Jason,
you've got Carolina, Michael Jordan. You've got the Michael Jordan of his NFL era right there.
Right. That's right.
It's easy to be Phil Jackson if you're coaching Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Shaquille O'Neal, and Scottie Pippen. I'll add in there too.
Right.
You got 2 top 5 players twice.
Yeah.
Like, geez.
And yet we're talking about Ryan Brown coming in from Purdue, and then after spring ball, he hightails it back to Purdue, and you're kind of like, uh-oh. And Max was a good player at his previous stops, but he's coming back from a major injury.
Yeah, it's a miracle he's playing.
Yeah, it really is. So it's just kind of a head-scratcher with that quarterback situation.
Yeah, I mean, and my thing is, you talking about finding difference makers. The first place I'm looking is my own roster. I'm going to find out if the guys I actually have on my roster can be those guys. Now, I understand practice and all that stuff, but yeah.
Look, here's the thing. I understand practice too, but I saw Bryce Baker in the practice like a pro event. I know what he looks like in scrimmage. I know what he looked like in the spring in scrimmage, and he probably hasn't gotten worse. And if he has gotten worse, what does that tell you? What does that tell you if you've got a guy who is getting worse while you're coaching him? That tells you need to switch swing coaches, Tiger. Right? That means you need to hire somebody else if you're getting worse actively. So, this is don't get me started on a Darryl Dickey rant going back to my Florida State days. If you have a bad quarterback coach, what you will see is a quarterback who is talented get worse month over month, year over year. Go back and I don't really want anybody to do this, but just rhetorically speaking, go back and watch in your mind's eye Chris Ricks in 2001, then watch Chris Ricks in 2002, and Chris Ricks in 2003, and Chris Ricks in 2004, and he got actively worse every year he was at Florida State. Now, from 2000 to 2001, when I got to see him, as a true freshman, obviously because I was there and on the roster, and then 2001, saw him, there. I was on the roster, got to see him. He got better between 2000 and 2001. And then they switched quarterback coaches. And from 2001 to 02 to 02 to 03, 03 to 04, he got worse every year. And that tells you Darryl Dickey was stealing money as a quarterback's coach. He was making that program and that team worse. Every quarterback he got his hands on, he made worse. So if Bryce Baker right now looks worse in practice than he did in the spring, everybody can draw their own conclusion. Like Bill Belichick should be able to draw his own conclusions from that. What I saw in the spring was a guy that I'm thinking, okay, he's moving, deciding a little slow on something. He's not seeing everything right, but this is a guy that can win some games and has a real potential as a player. And maybe by second half of his freshman year, maybe he's ready. That was what I was thinking when I watched it. Like, yeah, maybe, he might not be ready freshman year, but there's a possibility. And if he's not progressing at all, you can draw your own conclusions about what's happening.
Sometimes the easiest answer is the answer. We got to talk about predictions. I'm going to talk about Johnny T-shirt. This is the longest game plan I think we've ever had. And it's about a Cal game and a 2-3 team and a Cal team, an average Cal team. But Johnny T-shirt, JohnnyT-shirt.com sponsors the show. Look, Jason does these breakdowns, and this is what's interesting. You can go back and find the breakdowns of Bryce Baker and all this stuff we've done over the last 10 months. And if you're a premium subscriber, you can look it up, check it out. It's all there. And you can get 10% off if you're a Johnny T-shirt order on Franklin Street or online. Great supporters of the program, great supporters of Inside Carolina, great supporters of premium members of Inside Carolina. Get what you got to get at Johnny T-shirt. Let's talk about predictions, boys. We do this every game. We're an hour and 15 minutes every game plan. We're an hour and 15 minutes into this show. I think it's been very enlightening. It's kind of like sometimes we talk about doing outtakes and doing after dark, and we should record after we get off the show and actually I feel like we've done that, right? It seems like we're there.
No, we're not quite. We let it rip a little more when we're off air. Let's be real.
Yeah, we're getting close. We name names.
We've gotten pretty close to unfiltered Jason tonight, Tommy, though. That's been very entertaining.
Must be some strong milk down there in Booze Creek.
It's late and I am tired.
But, I mean, to your point is valid. I mean, all this stuff doesn't matter unless they have a good quarterback. And if the quarterbacks they have are getting worse, then take your shots at the people that matter. As I always say, the adults in the room. Sometimes they're very young adults, but they're still adults in the room. Greg, you're first up. Predictions, Carolina Cal, 10:30 Eastern, 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Western. It is an interesting matchup here, one that we certainly put in the win column 2.5 months ago or 2 months ago.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is a game that kind of sets up well for North Carolina just because of how Cal plays. And I think if North Carolina can figure out a solution with Thad Dixon on the back end and make sure that's not too much of a liability, I think they can limit damage. And I think this is a game that North Carolina can play competitively. And I think it can be an entertaining game, which we haven't seen against a power conference team this year. Even so, and I guess we'll blame it on the late kickoff, right, on the West Coast in the Atlantic Coast Conference. But I've got Cal winning this one in a nail biter, 28-24.
Lord have mercy. Before Jason drops his, he's already written. Don't write it down yet. I got fun guy in the chat. 38-10 Cal.
Wow.
Sorry. 35-10 from Sam Rogers, who's a regular. Steve Williams is a regular. 27-13 Cal.
Is that Stevie?
Bart what? Huh?
Stevie?
Yeah,
It's Tiger Woods' caddy, right?
Oh yeah, it's low key him. You know, he's giving lessons after this. Bart Watts, come on, Bart, man, you're a believer, and he's going 24-14. Zach Jones, Freddie Kitchens' offensive explosion, 34-13 Cal. 30-17. Randy doesn't even bother putting who wins. Sean Crowley, there's your positivity pod. Shock the world, Carolina 24-20. Upset 21-17. I'm trying to get in here. Mr. Peoples 38-28, 35-28 Carolina. Jason, you're up.
Yeah, so I do think actually I'm going to project a Freddie Kitchens offensive explosion here. I think we're going to see a little bit of a difference there because I think this Cal defense will give up a little bit more than say Clemson did, and they're not quite athletically what Carolina has faced on some of those fronts. So I think Carolina clears 20 points in this game. True offensive explosion, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I've got Cal winning this game as well. I'm kind of going back and forth in terms of final score, but I'm going to go with Cal 31, UNC 24. I don't know if you can even see that. There we go. Let's get that.
Yeah, something like
just
that.
as proof that I was writing that down when Greg was speaking. 31-24. Not stealing your thing. We were real close again. So,
Thomas, I feel like we could continue talking. I mean, the crowd's gotten bigger. It kind of reminds me of the Virginia-Florida State game. No offense, Jason, where
I'm
the
not
students.
offended. I'm not playing.
Yeah, the student section.
This stuff does
Virginia,
not. What I don't understand, you're going to get some unfiltered stuff here. What I don't understand,
Stop.
like you can't let this stuff affect your life.
Kirby Smart
This stuff
says,
it doesn't materially impact my life.
100%. I agree with you. My point, Virginia's student section was lively against Florida State, but as that game came down to the end, they started pouring in, and it resulted in the most epic field storming I've ever seen. Square White's still missing.
He's been injured multiple weeks since then. You got to wonder.
But my point is, people have come to hear real talk that we try to do here on these Inside Carolina podcasts, and there's really nothing positive to say until we get positive. Jason, if you want to continue going off, I'll leave it rolling and I'll go refill my drink. But I'm gonna go 28-25 Cal, and I predict Reese Verhoff has a very good game out in Berkeley. He is, of course, the field goal kicker for Carolina. So we'll see what happens. Greg, anything left here? If we come back next week and we're talking about the Virginia game plan and Carolina is 2-4, at what point do you see significant changes that Inside Carolina reported, both coaching staff and player who's playing? Do we ever see those this year, in your opinion, Greg?
Look, I think we're at the point where we can say the coaching staff is going to say what the coaching staff probably needs to say just for their own sanity and just for how Bill Belichick runs things. On the flip side, I think the fan base is more unanimous in their beliefs on the current state of the program after 6 games of a coaching staff coming in, which is just mind-boggling to me. But there's a unity there in understanding that, yeah, you could talk about process, all those things. You got to show it. You got to prove at some point that there's reason to trust you with this program moving forward. And I think that's the key thing. And we're going to be able to pick apart this game on Saturday and say, after the game Friday on Saturday, and say, okay, well, they did this better, or maybe this was worse. But what they need more than anything is a victory. And I think the opportunity is there. This is a game they can win, but they have to play better than they've played all season long. It's not a Clemson game where it's way out of reach. But they have to do the things necessary to be able to still win. And I think that's the first step in trying to salvage this fan base. You're not going to win back the fan base this season. You're going to do that over the offseason and next year if you're going to do it. But what you need to do right now is kind of prove that, okay, look, we are going to be able to make some of this work. We're going to show you that. But until they prove it, I don't think anybody in the fan base is going to believe it. And so I'm not going to predict a victory until we see them win one of these games against the power conference team. And I think that's just how it needs to be. And I think there's a lot of Carolina fans who kind of believe the same thing.
Absolutely. Jason, I'll give you the mic to end it on. I mean, you've been hot tonight.
I'm standing on what I said. I mean, I would be surprised if we see major changes on the coaching staff this season. I don't think that's likely. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe a few changes in terms of personnel. If it gets to the place where they're, 2-5, that sort of thing, I wouldn't be surprised to see more, maybe some opportunities for the young quarterbacks. I mean, that's one of those things where you do give them some opportunities there to find out a little bit of how they look under the lights. But I guess maybe they wouldn't be playing under the lights if they're 2-5. But against a real opponent,
mimosas and omelets for tailgates.
They're going to be starting to get games broadcast at 10:30 in the morning on the Cartoon Network. But anyway, I don't really expect to see changes this season. And I do, normally in these cases, I'm not normally advocating for changes in season. I mean, that normally doesn't make a huge difference. I mean, sometimes you do have an opportunity where it works well, like at UCLA this year. But, if you don't have somebody that you really believe is going to be able to run a system or run what you want a lot better than after the change, then you just kind of have to play out the string and make changes after the season. I do think after the season, I'll be surprised if there aren't a couple changes. I mean, I don't think Belichick is going to be, if he himself is going to stick around, and I expect him to through next year, largely because I don't think he's going to have other opportunities. Then, I think he would love to go to the NFL, but I don't think anybody in the NFL is hiring him. So, given that, I think he's going to be back. But if this is what he's getting this year, a couple guys at least will find their way out of the program, and he'll try to replace them with people that he believes in more. How that's actually going to work, I don't know, but I don't expect that necessarily to happen during the season, even if things are really bad. And things are really bad already, but they can get worse.
Like we said last week, there are deeper worst than we have seen so far. Carolina Cal, 10:30 Eastern on ESPN. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina for a complete coverage of that game, the crowd heading out to Cal to cover the game. We'll have the day after podcast, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. So you can either choose game day or you can choose Buck, Jason, and me. We replace Saturday morning cartoons. We replace Saturday morning game day. We'll be talking about Carolina and Cal on Saturday. I will not be sitting in this chair. I will be elsewhere, but we will be live at 10. Stay tuned for all of Greg's work on the Inside Carolina website. Stay tuned for all the film breakdowns, Taylor, VIP, everything. Did a couple interviews today, one of which, for those inclined, wrestling coach Rob Cole and I talked for roughly 45 minutes. So Coach Cole is you don't get a lot of coach speak from Coach Cole, so that's worth listening to when you're talking about Olympic sports and the battle that they face in the NIL era and whatnot. Jason, Greg, it's always fun. Johnny T-shirt's always great. And Dollar Shave Club. Maybe we can
From the
we
sink
can
to the
get
stadium.
from the sink to the stadium and get our bet going. We'll see who's closer on the predictions again. Boys, it's been fun. It's been long, but it's been fun.